thank you to BOTB who have sponsored this video. BOTB are the dream car competition where somebody is guaranteed to win a car every single week. Tickets start at just 85 pence and they have loads of different cars available, from hot hatches to SUVs, sports cars to saloons, and there's pretty much every make you can think of available. They've been around for 20 years and have given away £33 million in prizes so far. So now could be your time to join their list of winners. You only have to be 16 or over to enter, and there's also the chance to win £20,000 cash in the boot. Links are in the description below. Welcome back to the AAA MF YouTube channel. Now we've already done a review of the 812 Superfast. Click on the link here to see that video. But the one we did was black. This one is Grigio with a beautiful heritage stripe on the bonnet. I think this one looks absolutely incredible. Now the owner of this car, my friend Mansell, owns an F12 as well. And after I did the review of the 812, I got loads of messages on Instagram and YouTube saying, is the F12 better? Would you buy an F12? What do you think? And I haven't driven an F12, so today we have an F12 with the 812. So we're going to drive both back to back, but why don't we start off by assessing which one is more beautiful? Now obviously this is subjective, but I think the front of the F12 looks sexier than the front of the 812, for sure. Jay, would you agree?
Yep.
You would agree. Let's have a look at the back of the cars. Round tail lights, very sexy. I like the rear of this car. Let's have a look at the back of the 812. So they've moved to the twin lights now. I think the F12 looks cleaner at the back as well.
I'd go for 812 rear.
You'd go for the 8?
Yeah.
No, I think that looks cleaner. It looks a lot more classic Ferrari, the back of the F12. But anyway, listen, everyone's gonna like the looks of different cars. What we're here today to see is how they both drive and how they compare. So let's jump in the F12. So it's been a while, but I finally got into an F12, and what's really interesting is that the owner has the F12 and the 812, and he said he would never sell the F12. So that's really interesting that he's got the newer model and wants to keep the old model. So let's see what it's like. I mean, you can't really go wrong with a V12 Ferrari, can you? I mean, I really like the old 12-cylinder Ferraris. I love the look of the 512 Berlinetta Boxer. I love the look of the Ferrari Testarossa. I think as they've got newer, I think the designs have got worse. I think the old designs are just absolutely beautiful, absolutely beautiful. The one thing that strikes you about driving these V12s is that they're very, very comfortable to drive, which means they're really GT cars because you can just take them on really, really long journeys. And a lot of people do. They take them down to the south of France from the UK, they drive across Europe in them. And that's something you can't really do in a V8 Ferrari. A V8 Ferrari is much more tiring to drive. So having the nice big engine means they have immediate pickup. And what's lovely about the F12 is you're driving along, you put your foot down, and then all of a sudden you get another kick up the arse when it hits about 5,500 RPM. What's interesting is you think this is fast, but then you get into the 812 and that is really fast. But do you need a car that's as fast as that on the road? Are you going to take an 812 onto a racetrack? I guess some people will, but I guess if you wanted a track car, you'd buy a 488 Pista. They're not as loud as you would think. They've got a nice noise to them. Sound better than the 488 that I've driven, but they don't sound as loud as you would think. You would think they would all sound as loud as the N Largo. The steering is really, really light, but also it communicates with you. Wow, it's a lot of fun. Wow. It's a wonderful car. This car hasn't disappointed me at all. I actually thought after driving the 812 this would just be slower, it wouldn't handle as well, but it's very, very, very entertaining. Possibly one of the best Ferraris ever made, modern Ferraris. Possibly. People always say that it's not a true Ferrari unless it's a 12-cylinder. So I'm not sure I agree with that, but this definitely has a special characteristic. And I mean, wow. So it's a little bit twitchy, and you notice the twitchiness more at low down speeds, because I guess when you're going faster you get more downforce and the aero works better and the car is more hunkered down. But at lower speeds it definitely feels a lot more twitchy. You have to have confidence to drive this car. The 812 is definitely an easier car to drive. You can just jump into an 812. If you're a competent driver, you can just put your foot down in the 812. With this, you definitely need much more confidence and a little bit of experience, because it can throw you into a hedge. And very important, if you're driving one of these, the tyres need to be warm. So when we left northwest London, I put my foot down in a straight line, and it was all over the place because the tyres weren't warm. So you have to get the tyres warm. So what's really nice is as you're going around corners and then you come out of a corner and you put your foot down, you get that lovely acceleration of the V12. Don't get that in V8s. In V8s and 6-cylinder cars, generally you need to change down a gear to access the power. But with a nice V12, you don't need to change down. You just plant the throttle and you've got the power. And that's the beauty of these lovely V12 engines. I have to say that the 812 actually surprised me when I drove that, because I thought that the 812 would just be this barge. But Ferrari have done a great job with the 812, especially putting the rear wheel steering on it. And also, they've worked wonders with the suspension on the 812. So that car in proportions is quite big. It's quite a big car, but it handles much better than you'd think for such a big car. Although it's not very good in the rain. I remember taking one out in Miami in the rain. Was not good in the rain. But then you're putting down a lot of power in an 812. So It still feels a little bit touchy as we're going around the bends this, but the more you put your foot down, the more it grips the road. Yeah, that V12 power is really addictive. It's really addictive. And what's interesting is you're driving this car and you think, well, it can't get any more powerful than this. And then you get into the 812 and it makes the F12 actually feel fairly slow. But, you know, I'm not a big proponent of fast cars on the road. One of the most enjoyable cars I've ever driven on the road was an Alfa Romeo 4C, and that had 240 brake horsepower and cost £40,000. I don't necessarily believe you need loads and loads of power to have fun, especially on the road. Different if you're taking it to a racetrack. And what's nice about this car is it feels like it's got just the right amount of power. Wonderful car. Wonderful. A wonderful, wonderful Ferrari. These are my final thoughts on these two beautiful cars. First of all, neither of them sound incredible, by the way. They both need aftermarket exhausts. That's interesting. They sound good inside the car, but you don't really hear the exhaust noise. I think the styling on the F12 is going to be more timeless, and I think it's going to, in the future, be looked at as one of the most iconic Ferraris they ever made. If you were going to buy a car to drive every day, the 812, no doubt about it. It's a better car, better handling. It feels much better on the road, more compliant, and it's faster, and you can really feel that extra speed. If you want something that you're going to take out at the weekend and something you're going to keep in the garage for years to come, I think you can't go wrong with the F12. I think at £160,000, you can get a good example. What else is there on the market that compares to that? Nothing. And what's interesting is driving two Ferraris again has made me realize how amazing this brand is. There really is nothing like a Ferrari. I prefer the Performante Coupe if I was going to spend 160, but that's a completely different car. It's a lot louder, it's a lot more flash. This is much more of a gentleman's car, and it's much, much more comfortable to drive. I hope you've enjoyed watching. Thanks again to our sponsor, BOTB. Please like, share, subscribe, and we'll see you soon for more videos.